Hello everybody, Manithral here, and welcome to the weekly update video for RS3. Now this week's update is rather large as combat gets a complete overhaul. This is actually going off the beta and feedback from the players to get an overall good focus of what is good and what is bad. But today's update will be a rather lengthy one, especially when we get into the patch notes, which goes over the new combat updates. Otherwise, let's get into this. So do keep in mind, if you want to know all the big things that did come with the combat update, we will be going over them. And I do mean we will be going over all of it. So Thok Smash, well, first of all, we have the Thok Smashing benefits. So from today, so yesterday until March 11th, you'll be able to find Thok hanging around War's Retreat, where he's brought a bundle of buffs to help you learn new ways of combat. What a better way to show off combat by having a benefit. Well, a big buff too. So, all the different buffs consist of, all the way from Damonheim, we have 3 mighty metal cauldrons full of the Overload Potion. So you'll find 2 of them near the portals and 1 near Thok himself. Take a sip, and get the effects of the Elder Overload boost. If you're already able to craft the Overload Solve potions, you'll instead gain the effects of an Elder Overload Solve. Death has graciously agreed to waive all death costs during this event. Members will respawn at a nearby hub instead of Death's office. Tier 4 luck is active throughout the event. Sign of Life cooldowns will reset upon entering bank areas. This including the Sign of Guaranteed via the Defense Skill Cape perk. And the combat orders will immediately reset their cooldowns when they end. You will be able to choose your Soul Reaper task, and it will credit your double points. Slayer Masters will offer a choice between 2 tasks without paying Slayer VIP tickets, and these buffs are not available for use by Iron Man players. And note that for the one, it says you'll be able to choose your Soul Reaper task, and it will credit you double the points. Iron Man players will receive the choice of the Soul Reaper task, but not the double the points. So there is something there a little bit for Iron Man players as well. The Oddment store is getting a bit of a refresh, so they recently looked how the Oddment store functions, and assessing player general engagement with the system, with all the information they gleaned. Some of the consumable broken down into 2 lists section. Static, which will be 3 spots and will play host tier keys, lamp, stars. These will not be rotating and will always be available. The other section, daily, will rotate every 24 hours and will contain useful items such as the Cinder Cores, Pulse Cores, Silverhawk Down, Dwarven Toolbox, so on and so forth. So that'll be going on. Also, the Cosmetic tab, meanwhile, containing 3 to 5 items, rotate weekly, updating on a Wednesday. There will be an update on this week, so March 6th. This tab will contain cosmetic items from a previous event and source, including pets and outfits. So that is something to be kind of excited and take a look at whenever it comes up. The Treasure Hunter calendar consists of and starts with March 5th to March 6th, Genie's Wishes, and March 7th through the 13th is the Academy of Heroes, which, if you battle your way through the Zamrock, Archglacier, and Crisis to get your hands on the new Chaotic Assault, Azure, Hurricane, and Fungal Death Swift overrides. The past favorites are the Chaotic Swiftness, Hurricane, Azure Sunshine, Berserk, and Fungal Tendrils and Assault. So what is going to be available is March 7th and 8th, the Echo Zamrock and Chaotic overrides. March 9th and 10th is the Echo of Archglacier and Azure overrides. March 11th and through the 12th is the Echo of Croasis and Fungal overrides. And March 13th is all the above. Finding and killing the bosses will give you a full set of overrides, and here is the look at the new ones. So as you can see, there's the fungal override, and as well as some of the others. The Arch Glacier one always looks awesome to me. Patch notes. They do consist of some necromancy first, which is reduce the rate of moonstone appears in the Thalmon store, increase the drop rate of moonstones from ritual disturbances, increase the drop rate of moonstones from ghostly implings. Thalmon now sells impure essence in its noted form. Quest refinement. So reinstated Betty's hand in the sand dialogue option when the quest is complete, so she can sell additional pink dye. General. Fix an issue that will cause the Dolorious gloves to make the player's head fully and partially invisible, depending on the worn head, armor, or cosmetics. So now the big chunk of everything is the combat update, which I'm sure everybody's excited for. I know I am too. So the damage potential replaced the roll to hit system with the new damage potential system for melee, ranged, and magic combat against the NPCs. Removed a number of hidden buffs that increase your hit chance when using special attack or ultimate abilities. Reduced the minimum hit chance required to an NPC under the new system, so 25% went to 1%. Critical Strike modernized the critical strike system for melee, ranged, and magic. Players now have a base critical strike chance of 10%. Players now have a base critical strike damage of 10%, increased with level ups until 50% at 90. Adjusted the damage of guaranteed critical strike abilities such as Shadow Tendrils, Smoke Tendrils, to take into account for their extra guaranteed damage. Reduce the adrenaline gain from the critical strike buff from Meteor Strike, Incendiary Shot, and Tsunami to account for players' additional base critical strike chance, so that went from 10% to 8%. The damage hit cap went from 10,000 to 30,000. Removed and replaced several effects from the items that affected the hit cap or were affected by the hit cap as they were no longer relevant. Channeled abilities added a channel bar component to the top of the level interface that is now displayed when using a channeled ability. So there will be a little bar and it'll show the ability you're using, and then it slowly ticks down until it's done, which means the ability is no longer being channeled. They removed the channeled ability presence from the buff bar. Channeled abilities cast out of range will now cause the player to run into range and cast as expected. Fix a number of issues with the Revolution being slow to act after finishing a channeled ability. Action bar improvements. Action bar slots will now highlight briefly with gold outline when interacted with. By default, action bar slots will now show their cooldown with a center timer. Note that this feature can be moved to the top right of the ability bar slot or toggled off/on via the settings combat and action bar action bar. Global cooldowns will no longer display the ability cooldown in text form to remove visual clutter. Remove the white flash that occurs at the end of the global cooldown rotation graphic. In the future, they would like to add something more subtle, but for now, just to keep the flashing relevant to the specific of abilities as opposed to having your entire action bar light up. Action bar slots that have no relation to the global cooldown will no longer display it unnecessarily, like the teleport or retreat. Action bar slots will no longer flash unnecessarily when swapping weapons after having been used in the current play session. Reduce the size of the keybind information as it was taking up a large amount of real estate with only contextual relevancy. Shorten the modifier keys such as the Alt C and AC. So Alt is going to A, Control is going to C, and Shift is going to S. So if it's Alt Control, it'll be AEC. That's it. Hit splat fade delay. So 70, 1.4 seconds, to 60, 1.2 seconds client cycles. Hit splats will appear as expected, allowing the newer hit splats to always replace the older hit splats if all slots are full. Damage clarity removed all linked damage rules such as snapshot, greater ricochet, and snipe with enchanted nightmare gauntlets. These abilities, damage, will now interact as expected with various damage buffs. Remove the damage per level granted by boosting melee strength, ranged, and magic stats. Note, potions will still boost accuracy and damage, however, it won't be done via two different systems. Ability damage ranges and have been rebalanced to account for the loss of DPL damage per level, and remove the skewed damage rolling from all abilities such as Dismember, Fragmentation Shot, and Combustion. Note that the average damage of these abilities will now be higher than before. So, one thing I do want to mention before we get into the next part, which is the melee core systems. The one thing that they did mention during this was the hit chance is now gone. Accuracy now impacts damage rather than the hit chance, and removing the splash and RuneScape and never miss an ultimate again. Damage consistency, and everything like that. So, basically, the odds of what actually hitting have stopped being from okay, you may or may not hit, to okay, just how well are you going to be hitting now. That's essentially what's going on now instead. So you'll hit, but it's just how hard will you hit. Critical strike is going to be a bigger thing too, etc, etc. But let's get into the core systems. So the abilities now respect the true center of the NPCs, using an attack that hits a target and enemies around the target within one tile correctly hunt in a 5x5 area if the NPC is a size 3x3. Rework the ability priority to reduce and remove the idea of hidden attacks where mechanics were not correctly synced up with their animations. Modified various hit timings to better match the visuals. Rewrote all melee abilities to be easier to adjust and work with. Note that this is a buff to the development and allows faster, more efficient changes going forward. Channeled abilities now allow movement while remaining within attack range of the target. So, if something moves, it will no longer be an issue. Updated damage ranges. So, slice average was 95% to 105%. Punish is 75% to 85%. Sever is 112.8% to 120%. Barge and greater barge, greater barge, it went from 75% to 85%. Havoc is 94.2% to 110%. Decimate went from 111.8% to 120%. Bladed dive was 75% to 85%. Kick/backhand 60% to 70%. Cleave is 112.8% to 120%. Chaos Roar is 75% to 95%. Flurry is 225.6% to 260%. Greater Flurry was 276.8%, 376.8% to 440%. Assault was 525.6% to 560%. Destroy was 451.2% to 520%. Frenzy was 610% to 730%. Hurricane was 265% to 285%. Stomp/forceful backhand was 120% to 330%. Quake 131.4% to 445%. Hit timing, Tuska's Wrath hit splat cycle is 1 faster. Quake hit splat cycle is 1 slower. Overpower hit splat is 1 slower. Dive and Bladed Dive, weaponry is no longer hidden during the dive animation, so they will now be showing. Fury now hits once, so is no longer a channeled ability, so they amended its damage to account for this. The average damage is 120%, which increases the critical strike chance of your next melee ability by 25%. And the cooldown went from 5.4 seconds to 15 seconds. Greater Fury, increases base damage to correctly act as a greater variant, so 105% to 130%. Increase the critical strike chance of your next melee ability by 25% to your next ability within 15 seconds and is guaranteed to a critical strike. So you can time that correctly, get a pretty cool hit there. Cooldown went from 5.4 seconds to 15 seconds. Sever reduced its cooldown to 15 seconds to 5.4 seconds. The Shard Sliver of Lang replaced the old special attack set effect and passive effect of the Lang swords, both tier 85 and 95. So added a new main hand passive. Frost, tier 85, attacks have a 5% chance to apply Primordial Ice stacking buff with each hit. Endless Frost, tier 95, attacks have a 10% chance to apply the Primordial Ice stacking buff on each hit. And they added the new offhand passives. Chill, tier 85, attacks have a 1% chance to apply a Primordial Ice stacking buff with each hit. Whenever you apply a Primordial Ice stack, gain Frost Blades for 6 seconds. Frost Blades attack deal an additional 24% of your ability damage stat on hit. Sorry guys, been a bit sick. Boundless Chill, which is tier 95, so attacks have a 2% chance to apply the Primordial stacking buff with each hit. And whenever you apply the Primordial Ice stack, gain a Frost Blades for 9 seconds. And the Frost Blades attacks deal an additional 24% on your ability damage on stat on hit. Sorry guys, I needed that. New Icy Typus special attack. So the tier 85 main hand now also has access to the Icy Tempest special attack. 30% adrenaline reduced, cost reduced by 12% per stack Primordial Ice. Hits primary target for average 110%. Hits AoE on all targets around the player for an average 165 damage, including the primary target. Consumes all Primordial Ice stacks when activated. Deals an additional 20% damage to enemies for each Primordial stack. 15-second cooldown. And Primordial Ice stacks up to 10 times. So note single target 0 stack special, 275% damage for 30% adrenaline with a 27% with vigor. Single target 1 special attack, 315% damage for 18% adrenaline, 15% with vigor. So that's pretty dang good if you ask me. That's a lot of damage for a little bit of adrenaline. Ranged. So the updated range damages. Okay, piercing shot 90% to 100%. Snipe 172% to 185%. Ricochet 60% to 70%. Greater ricochet. Additional single target hits 30% to 35% and 10% to 12.5%. Demoralizing binding shot 60% 70%. Dazing shot / greater 94.2% to 105%. Needle strike 94.2% to 105%. Snapshot 265% to 285%. Tight binding / route 120% to 130%. Rapid fire 451.2% to 560%. Bombardment 131% to 140%. Unload 610% to 680%. Dead shot initial hit is the average of 112.8% to 120%. Salt and wound 112.8% to 120%. Bow of the Last Guardian balanced by force and / perfect equilibrium. Stored damage 42.5% to 35%. Base damage 11% to 14%. Balanced by force special attack, the average damage is 275% to 245%. Perfect equilibrium now stores the damage before critical strike roll. This means you no longer double up on power if the attack triggers PE rolls a crit. Buff icon changes increase the buff bar priority so it falls closer to the front of the bar. The buff is no longer hidden at 0 stacks to prevent it from flickering. Buff is no longer redrawn when the player activates a special, preventing it from shifting position. Special attack during is now shown on a special buff icon. Saren God Bow, on average, 140% per shot. The initial shot always targets the center of the NPC. The subsequent shots target tiles within a 5x5 area around the center. Note that this means that the 5x5 enemies will always be hit 5 times. The Shadow Tendrils are now guaranteed to critically strike. Hit count is 2 to 5 to 5. Ruby Bolts, the Blood Forfeit, deals 20% damage of the target's current health, capped to 10,000 or 12,000. Increases the damage of the attack by 25 to 125% ability damage based on your target's current life points. And this went from 6 seconds cooldown to 0 second cooldown. Deals 10% of your life points as recoil damage. Deals 5% of your life points as recoil damage. Keep in mind this is a shift from one to the next. 5% chance reduced by 1% for each 1 HP your target has, and this goes to 5% proc chance. When arrows special abilities now also consume Icy Chill. Updated the base damage and hit chance increase from the Icy Precision stack. Threshold abilities 2% to 3%. Ultimate abilities 3%, which is unchanged, and special abilities is 0% to a 3%. Now we head into magic. Not quite as much here, but you got the Rack 90% to 100%, Rack and Ruin 180% to 200%, Dragon Breath 112.8% to 120%, Chain Greater Chain 60% to 70%. Keep in mind these are all averages. Shock Impact 60% to 70%, Sonic Wave 94.2% to 105%, Greater Sonic Wave 115% to 125%, Concentrated Blast 147.6% to 162%, Greater Concentrated Blast 160.2% to 168%, Wild Magic 265% to 180%, Horror Deep Impact is 120% to 130%, Detonate 225% to 250%, Asphyxiate 451.2% to 480%, Magma Tempest 96% to 220%. And the special thanks to special attacks, I don't know why it's special thanks, but special attacks now display their cooldowns and target type in their tooltips. Updated narrowed the damage ranges of special attacks, and we're going to check into the full list here, much like we did for the abilities up above. So, Noxious Weaponry, Mirror Back, Spider's HP is increased to 10k, now reduce incoming damage even if there's not a target to reflect at all. A Dragon Battle Axe, Rampage, move the damage buff over to a multiplicative bonus, was additive. Added Necromancy into the stat reduction effect. Removed a hidden debuff that increased NPCs. Other players' hit chance to hit you under a spec, stacking with the existing defense debuff. Dragon Longsword, Draconic Cleave, up the average damage slightly to account for the loss of the hit cap raising effect, which went from 250% to 270%. Dragon Claw, Slice and Dice went from 400% to 360%. Armadillo Godsword, the Armadillo's Judgment, up the damage, more in line with Dragon Claws. So it's 235% to 400%. Bandos Godsword, War Strike, simplified the stat draining effect as it was hard to determine its value. So now reduces all target stats by 0.5% of damage dealt instead of one stat at a time. Removed a secondary modifier that was being applied as a curse drain. Ceradomin's Sword, Ceradomin's Lightning, both hits are now magic damage, and this went from 105% to a 270% per hit. Vesta's Spear, Spear Wall, now reduces incoming damage even if the target there's not a target to reflect that. So 45% to 100%. Keen Blade arms aim strikes. Special renamed to Critical Strike to reduce confusion with the Critical Strike mechanic. The average damage went from 130% to 140%. Hit chance bonus is 25% to 20%. Adrenaline 75% to 35%. Karasi's Sword Disrupt. Dominion Tower quest versions updated to pull data from the reward version. Added a walk merge to the specific special attack animation. Attack will no longer stall players' movements. Dark Light / Weaken. Stat reduction changed from 1 level to 5% of levels to 6% reductions. Barrel just Anchor Sunder. The ability was random. While random can be good, this one is just a bit too wacky. So randomness has been removed. Now always applies the +4 base hit chance increase and reduces the target's damage dealt. Brackish Blade, the Brine Saber, Liquefy. Now both weapons share the Liquefy ability instead of having different but very similar attacks. No longer has underwater restriction. Stat boost is no longer based on damage dealt. It was almost always hitting in the internal cap anyway. Now just boost stats by 3 flat levels plus 10%. Magic Shortbow, the Twin Fang, special renamed to Snapshot to reduce confusion with the Snapshot ability. The adrenaline went from 55% to 50%. Dark Bow, Descent of Darkness, average damage went from 240% to 210%. Magic Shield Bow, the Power Shot, hit chance bonus is 20% to 40%. Gothic's Bow, Balance Shot, adrenaline 55% to 35%. Average damage was 90%, now to 180%. Heal 100% of damage over 60 seconds, and now it's 60% of damage over 15 seconds. Heal cap of 400 removed. Ceridoma Bow, Restorative Shot, the adrenaline 55% to 30%. The damage went from 60% to 140%. Heal 200% of damage over 60 seconds is now 100% of damage over 15 seconds. The heal cap has 400 removed. Zamrock Bow, Destructive Shot, adrenaline 55% to 40%. The damage per hit 60% to 170%. Xanax Crossbow, the adrenaline went from 50% to 40%. Average damage 110% to 250%. Simplified PvP bonus damage, varying damage increased based on which pairs were active. This is now just a flat 10% damage bonus damage for each pair active. Hand Cannon, Aim Shot. Adrenaline went from 50% to 35%. Average damage 115% to 330%. Eldritch Crossbow, Split Soul. Player's soul split icon will now visually change to a split soul icon. While this effect is active, added an audio cue when split soul ends. Quick Bow, Twin Shot. The adrenaline went from 75% to 35%. The average damage 65% to 60%. Hit chance increased from 25% to 50%. Circle Bow, Soul Shot, adrenaline went from 60% to 50%. Average damage 60% to 110%. Damage now increased based on damage on how high the target's current magic level is. So 2% per magic level. Now drains a flat 5% of the flat 5% of the target's magic level instead of scaling with the damage dealt. Decimation, Locate. Adrenaline went from 50% to 35%. Worgen Javelin, Phantom Strike, applies some BBM. And sorry guys, my throat is really killing me today. Average damage 72% to 130%. The DOT, damage over time, portion has been modernized. The average damage is 35% per hit, 5 hits. Worgen Cernax's Hamstring, No longer drains run energy. Now prevents from using movement abilities for a short duration. Average damage is 72% to 160%. Strike bow, deep burn / dark burn. So remove the damage threshold where values would change. Now it stores a flat 50% of damage taken. Simplified damage storage. Special now has the initial hit. Average damage is 195%. Damage over time damage now occurs 1.2 seconds instead of every 0.6 seconds for visual noise. And now releases 12.5% of the initial damage stored per hit was 2.5%. Ivan Staff, the Ivan Blast. Damage was 320% to 365%, 50% adrenaline. Penance Trident Reap. Damage is 130% to 290%, 45% adrenaline. Refunds 20% of the adrenaline if the target if it kills the target. Mind Spike, the Rune Flame. Adrenaline went from 75% to 35%. Zuriel Staff, the Miasmic Barrage. Adrenaline 100% to 50%. And Code Centralization debuff should now be more consistent. Obliteration Devour now has an initial hit. Average damage of 220%. Adrenaline went from 100% to 50%. Debuff duration with 10.2 seconds to 15 seconds. And the Code Centralization healing debuff should now be more consistent and work in more places. Staff of Darkness, so the Power of Darkness, added a buff / debuff visibility. Now reduces the damage if no target has to reflect that. Armadillo Battle Staff, the Tempest of Armadillo, damage per hit lowered 55% to 50%. Now deals a 5% increased damage with each subsequent hit. So the average total damage is 270% to 300%. Global cooldown abilities: Surge, Dive, and Escape. Can always be cast during a global cooldown, no longer generate adrenaline, are now classed as abilities rather than basic abilities. Equilibrium Aura has been redesigned, so Aura Effect now increases a player's ability to damage stat by 12%, but prevents the player from critically striking. Equilibrium Perk now increases your ability to damage stat by 0.5% per rank. This will apply to the base level, increasing damage over time, poison, and other effects. Has been renamed Eruptive. The old name implies that positive and negative will no longer fit the new effect. PvP damage effectiveness: Valley of Souls 55%, Death Grasp 40%, Overpower, Igneous Cape is 60%, Omni Power, Igneous 65%. Icy Tempest, Long Swords, 70%. Balance of Force, Bow the Last Guardian, 70%. And some miscellaneous changes and bug fixes, so the updated Magic's animation priorities. This should lead to more fluid animation and reduced attacks firing while hidden without animations. Combat Dummies, updated max hit mode to guaranteed critical strikes. Updated how the player who modifies the mode is stored so that the dummy remembers who they are if they log out. The combat dummy at War's Retreat will now correctly play a defend flinch animation with each hit inflicted. Vestments of Havoc's increased adrenaline no longer work with non-melee styles. Fix several issues with the magic ability animation priority. Revolution no longer delays the player after casting channeled abilities such as Greater Concentrated Blast. Fix an issue with the Guthix Blessing and the Brief Respite Invention perk, where the masks were being calculated incorrectly. All targets affected by the Greater Chain will now benefit from its additional hit granted by Rack and Ruin's secondary Combust extension buff. Auto attacks damage range went from 0 to 100% to 20% to 100%. Mobile perk Shadow's Grace no longer cause Barge, Greater Barge, or Bladed Dive to generate half adrenaline. Blood Tendrils cleanup self damage was calculated Hits added through the Spear of Annihilation now get appended to the end of the ability instead of placing them in the front of double damage initial hit. Greater Barge / Barge. Greater Barge no longer forces channeled abilities to attack every 4 cycles instead of using the same rate the ability would naturally do. Now uses the correct barge animation rather than the kick animation. Berserk has the multiplicative modifier as opposed to the additive modifier. Flurry now has the full damage in both single target and multi-target scenarios. Assault has had the animation updated to better match the ability and hit timings. Magma Tempest, the targeted variant, and now applies to the auto attack delay when cast to match the standard ability it casts. Rack and Ruin Combust extensions effects now stack base, benefiting from the abilities such as Greater Chain that causes it to hit multiple enemies. Metamorphosis has had its damage bonus increase from 62% to 66%. PvP is 31% to 33%. Greater Dazing Shot, hit chance debuff, so now active for the full 4.2 seconds and it is not cleared on attack. The hit chance debuff is now reapplied when the ability is used. Previously it wouldn't, which meant it could time out. Quest bosses increase the base hit chance of all the following bosses to standard base hit chances. As an example, his Bouncer had a 10 base hit chance when fought with magic, and this has increased to the standard 45. So, the next list is the quest bosses here, guys. Trace's Wrath, the Hunted Mine, HP went from 5,009 to 450. Chronozone, Family Crest, 6,000 to 1,350. Dominion Tower HP is 12,000 to 13,150. Dominion Tower Rumble Mode, Rumble, 24,000 to 26,250. The Everlasting Dream Mentor, 18,000 to 19,150. Dominion, DT, I'm going to call it Dominion Tower DT. 13,400 to 1,950. The Untouchable Dream Mentor, 15,000 to 16,000. DT is 10,000 to 16,000. S Queen, Void Stares Back, 50k to 50k, 51,200. DT is 100,000 to 102,500. Nizik Chinid, Legends Quest, 15,000 to 20,800. DT is 20,000 to 20,800. Barrel Chest, the Great Brain Robbery. The Great Brain Robbery HP is 25,000 to 30,200. DT is 14,000 to 14,000/20,000 to flat 22,850. Barrel Chest Pieces of Hate, 15,000 to 16,000. Black Knight Titan, Holy Grail, 4,000 to 13,200. Bouncer Fight Arena, HP is 5,500 to 13,150. DT is 5.5 to 13.15. Bouncer the General Shadow, 6.5 to 14.55. Tozket Dill, I'm not sure what's going on there. 10,000 to 21,000. Elvarg Dragon Slayer, 15,000 21,000. DT is 19,000/9,000 to a flat 21,000. General Gazard Fight Arena, 6,000 to 1,350. DT is 9,000 to 1,350. General Gazard, I don't know why I want to keep on that, but General Gazard Ritual of the Majorette is 45,000 to 56,100. DT is 45 to 56,100. Giant General Gazard Fight Arena, 6,000 to 13,150. Nile Swiftling Glorious Memories, 5,800 to 10,050. DT is 5,800 to 10,050. Melzar the Mad Dragon Slayers 1,400 to 2,250. DT was 2,800 to 4,500. Barrel Chest MK Clockwork Syringe 30k to 35,050. Fairy Godfather Fairy Tale Part 3 6,000 to 10,500. Evil Spirit Rum Deal HP is 2,000 to 6,500. Glod Grim Tales 12,000 to 21,000. Damus, which is Desert Treasure, 20,000 to 26,250. Fareed, 20,000 to 26,250. Camille, 21,000 to 26,250. Deseus, 25,000 to 26,250. And Tizhar Ket Yittel, the Elder Kin, 7,500 to 35,050. That had quite a bit of leap. Oh, that is all that stuff, guys. Now we just go to the community showcase. This is more of your small stuff here, but nonetheless important and pretty cool stuff. First, we have some art concepts and some cool artwork here from the 9th Cloud Art, getting into some practice and some absolutely classic characters. Looks absolutely awesome. And then a very awesome image here from Reyes with the illustrations of Naive. Absolutely awesome artwork. And then we have Johnny Boy 647 showing off his favorite god, which happens to be Armadillo. Pretty cool looking picture there. Then we go into the Rune Tube. Up first, we have some Protox Gaming, which is the essentials for all RuneScape PVMers. And if you're not familiar, Protox Gaming is probably one of the best ones to check out for anything PVM related. One of the best, I said. Scaper screenshots. Well, first we have Jay Sindab enjoying the Aya Hot Springs. And then we have Bjorn Gnomes checking out the different areas in the desert, just mining away. And then we have the Pink Skirts player events. So first we have the Megaduck Hunt hosted by Steve20058, Megaduck and Icy Love. Friday, March 8th at 1900 game time, World 39, location is Fowler Park, FC is Megaduck. Skill and Chill hosted by Princess Spray, Firesteel 918, and Spirits of the Aryan Wind Clan. This will be Monday, March 4th at 300 game time. World 116, Fort 4 and 3. They had these out of order. And then we have next Angel of Death, hosted by Pippi Spot and the Boss Guild. The date and time is Friday, March 8th at 2000 game time, World 88. God of War's Dungeon, Ancient Prison. The FC is the Boss Guild. Now, the community spotlight is the One Small Adventure. If you're not familiar, they've been having a little thing going on, but do go check this out. This continues on the official Discord and the server events channel, so do take part. This week is the Fast SC teaming up a skeleton to perplex you with Enchanted Letter Puzzle, so do check that out. And then that is actually finally it, guys, so thank you guys so much for watching. And I know it's a long video, but there's a lot of patch notes there. So thank you so much for watching. And until next time, later, guys.